Well, hello, my name is ZYZ, and I'm a dumb white guy. I'm not old or new, but middle school, 8th grade like junior high. I think it was like 7th grade in the original rap. Yes, hello. It's 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Y'all ain't got nothing better to do. We're here. This is the Surreal Symphony of Zach ZYZ, currently in day number 32 of our continuous editing, breakdown, meltdown, hoedown, showdown, any kind of down that you want to get. We're wilding out here, boys. So, yeah, I'm going to take the, what do we got? ZYZAM. Shout out to Spathywah right there. Some of y'all may not know it, but yesterday we had a call about developing potentially a game or something like that. So more news on that as it'll come. Yeah, it looks like we got about 112 pages to go to be halfway through this month. How long are the chapters at the end of this? Is what I'm saying. How can we have 700 pages of this? I don't understand. But yeah, I think the chapters start off pretty small, but they can get longer as we go along. So we may have more trimming towards the end because I like the cadence of these chapters that we have so far. Okay. If you've never joined this stream before, this hold on, let's go to Reddit r sci-fi. Let's take a gander at this right here. So we were on self-promo Saturday. This other guy got all the comments and shit. Because he put out his first novel yesterday. We did not do as good of a job of marketing, but we still got like a few people to come through here. So I wrote up basically like a new intro here for this guy, where it says that GRAVID is the story of Freya Jokla, a high school sophomore who suffers from severe depression in the wake of her father's death. Isolated and bullied, Freya makes up her mind to end it all. Fortunately, her suicide attempt is thwarted by a meteorite crash. As she investigates, Freya rekindles the passion for astronomy she once shared with her father. She soon learns this is no mere falling star, it is a piece of alien technology. Now, the sole possessor of evidence of extraterrestrial life, Freya must face a new set of challenges no human being has ever faced. You can see we did not do the stream edit on this chapter, or this paragraph, because it's unwieldy as fuck. So now I'm not surprised that we didn't get that many people coming through here. Yeah, it just... anything I put out that people are going to read, I think I'm getting to the point where I need to do that same editing process with, because it's just, everything seems so clunky before an edit now. I like it might be that like before I write a check, I have to sit down on stream and edit in front of everybody. It's fucking awful. So how were y'all's days yesterday? I went out and hung out with my girl. I played this new World War II game called Undaunted, and yeah, it was actually like rules complex. But I wound up getting my first game of this game. Is like you capture objective points, and it's like a deck builder where every time the opponent shoots your troops, you remove like one of those troops out of your deck. It's like an interesting phenomenon, but. Yeah, so I was just like getting the swing for the game, like trying to figure out how to play it and everything. And she's just like, okay. And she just like swooped in with her troops and sees the 5 control points needed to win the game. And I was like, fuck. But then we played again and I was able to avenge the allies. Just how it goes, boys. Some days you're fucking the Allies. Some days you're Hitler hunkered down in a bunker, fucking waiting for the end. One of the actions that you could do in that game was to hunker, where you just remove a card from your deck, which is kind of, I don't know exactly why you go about doing that. I still haven't figured the game out quite that. And then we played a bunch of Tyrants of the Underdark, which I was surprised to find that she loves. It was my favorite game of the year from like 2017 or something like that. And I was brutal in enacting victory there. But I realized after the second game that I might have played a roll wrong. So there's hope yet. All right. So yeah, Sunday morning. I think it's about time to edit chapter number 43. So this is our 32nd continuous day of editing every morning. Wow, shout out to everybody that hopped onto the stream all early in the AM. Yeah, you can talk about just about anything that you want in the stream. I don't really give a shit. I'm only going to ban people who are creepy as fuck. And I say that just because people have been creepy as fuck the last couple days on some of the other channels. And I'm pleased that that hasn't gone on here for the most part. People have been like super supportive and chill. I mean, we had a few Nazis coming through, but that's just like being on the internet. You're going to talk with some Nazis. But otherwise, everybody has been so chill on this entire thing. And I just want to thank everybody. We got some feedback yesterday that I should try and continue talking and not just scowl at the screen when I'm concentrating deeply. And I'm trying to figure out like whether that's something that's doable. Because sometimes, man, when I'm just working on a line of chat or something like that, I'm like, all engine power to warp cores or whatever. I think it would be a better experience for viewers. I don't know, maybe like I could add a button that, oh, there's our boy Caliphrase right there, Mr. Kumquat Liquor. I can't believe you just randomly typed out a name and it wound up being Kumquat Liquor. That's fucking baller. So anyhow, yeah, we might have like intense music. I wonder if I could have a drum roll that just gets more intense the entire time that I'm doing that whole thing. I need like a 30-minute long drum roll that that sounds much more annoying than anything else that I could possibly do. But all right, so what do we have happen yesterday? So yesterday, Freya decided that she had had enough of having her mind controlled by a probe from outer space and went ahead and locked the star ball in her locker, immediately severing the connection with this weird alien orb. However, things did not go as planned with the forfeiting of this, or the sequestering of this star ball into her locker, as she immediately became just terribly depressed and wants to die. Complicating the fact is that her friend Jane Yang is pissed off that she got driven home by Dan Gregulus, this boy who's on the track team that Jane fancies and Freya ostensibly does not. And so Jane rolls up to Freya in the hallway and confronts her, calls her a cunt. I don't think she actually calls her a cunt in this edit. She used to call her a cunt in the initial thing, but instead she tells her that she doesn't have any friends, nobody likes her, and why doesn't she just go ahead and kill herself? And Freya was just thinking, hey, that's a great idea. I should definitely just kill myself. But in this particular case, rather than doing so, let me see. God, Juan is so fucking crazy. I got to tell you, like in my long experience, well, anyhow, Jane Yang gets slapped by none other than Radomir, the weird ballet kid, and they all get hauled off to the office. And so this next chapter that we're going to read through is them dealing with being in the office. So Caliphrase says, what are you reading, man? I didn't get it. So this is, we're not just reading this novel, we're editing it as this is going on, trying to make it ready for publication. This is the first of about 7 different edits that will happen to this book before it gets published. We start with like the rough draft that I wrote, just like making it up out of my own head, sitting in a coffee shop every day for 3 years. And now we're doing the first edit of it, where we try to fix like some of the major problems and address things that are structurally wrong with the story. And then there's going to be an increasing number of edits. There could be as many as like 10 or 12 edits of this at varying stages of the thing. But yeah, so this is a book. Yeah, no worries. Glad to fill in there. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I've run like relatively large online communities, and by relatively large, I mean for IRC. Like Discords can get up to like 30 or 40,000 people. I'm not fooling around like that. But yeah, I've been running a large community for IRC for 4 or 5 years now. And one thing I've noticed is that crazy people seem to come in cycles, right? And some of that may be that fallacy. Oh, hold on just a second. Fucking, why is irc.prison.net resetting my topic there? Fucking. Let me see. There we go. There we go. So I don't want to, anyhow. But yeah, it just seems like when you get one crazy person coming through, there are going to be like 2 or 3 others popping up. We have like regular crazy people that will come through, and it's just part of chatting on the internet. And yeah, man, once you get one, some others are going to pop up there. I don't know if they're like drawn to the scent of crazy, or if it's tied into phases of the moon, or if it has to do with the average time where somebody's SSI runs out. I bet it's closer to they get that welfare check at the beginning of the month and go hog wild for a couple of days, and then are like caught in like a dopamine dependency loop, where the only way that they can get recognition or like that hit of somebody recognizes me is by like antagonizing people on the internet. So I think we see similar periods of activity with Dwayne, where and shout outs to Dwayne right there, where like at the first of the month he has like Social Security money or whatever the Canadian equivalent is, and he's drunk and like merry and so forth. And as the month goes on, he has less money to get drunk, and crazies stalk in groups, gang stalkers. I thought about putting gang stalking into this book. I think it would be dope, but I'm not sure that it's appropriate. Well, that said, now that we're on the topic of crazy people, let's get into this story. So this is Gravid by Zach ZYZ, chapter 43. I'm so sorry. What if I didn't read it like that? I'm so sorry, Jane sobbed. She was an absolute mess. She'd cried her face into a blotchy watercolor of smeared eyeliner and washed out foundation. They were all sitting in 4 uncomfortable chairs facing each other. Radomir was at Freya's left, Jane was at her right, and Mr. Evers sat across from all of them. Radomir was silent and pitiless. He glowered at Jane like an idol carved from stone. Freya shrugged at the apology. Jane had been sorry last night, too. Jane had been so sorry last night, too. This is not how I wanted to start this week, Mr. Evers cut in. He looked tired, and it wasn't even first period yet. His shoulders rose as he inhaled. He'd lifted this load many times before. Let's start with you, Mr. Stitch. No matter what was said, physical violence is completely unacceptable. What she said is also unacceptable, Radomir said, staring back. He crossed his arms. Both of your actions are indefensible. 2 wrongs do not make a right, and both of you will be disciplined. I will accept the punishment, Radomir reiterated. As it stands right now, the punishment is expulsion, Mr. Evers said. Radomir's eyes shot open. At once the stony mask was gone. What? Radomir said, and Freya found herself mouthing. Okay. What? Radomir said, and Freya found herself mouthing the same thing, but without the Russian accent. Yeah, I probably should not do that pseudo-Russian accent. I don't care. I'm having a good time with it. Maybe if I practice, I'll get good at it. I should go to Russia to research. That's right. I won't let anyone who's a danger to other students remain at Grayson. I won't let anyone who. I won't let anyone who. Yeah. That's right. I won't let anyone who poses a danger to other students remain at Grayson. So make sure expulsion is a punishment you're willing to accept. Radomir uncrossed his arms. She cannot. Radomir began too loud, realized it, and lowered his voice. She cannot say these things. Let's get to that. Let's get to that, Mr. Evers said. I didn't mean it, Jane pleaded. I don't care. Mr. Evers turned on Jane. Hmm. Let's get to that, Mr. Evers said, nodding in agreement with Radomir's point. I didn't mean it, Jane pleaded. I don't care. Mr. Evers turned on Jane. It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you said, which is despicable. You can never unsay it. Freya will never unhear it. You two are supposed to be friends. I'm ashamed of you. Okay, so that's... people don't generally talk like that. These big blocks of sentence. What do we got here? Do it. Russian accent. What did he say? What? So ridiculous. I honestly, like, maybe I should go to Dwayne is talking about farming mushrooms there. Maybe I should go to like an accent school or something. I would just love to be good at accents. I haven't put the work and to get good accents, but I know I would love it. I don't care. Mr. Evers turned on Jane. Mm-hmm. I don't care. Mr. Evers turned on Jane with unexpected anger. It doesn't matter what you want. It matters what you said, which is despicable. You can never unsay it. Freya will never unhear it. The two of you are supposed to be friends. I'm ashamed of you. The two of you, yeah, you two are supposed to be friends. I'm ashamed of you. Jane began to weep anew, and there was no artifice this time. Mr. Evers let her cry it out, and there's no kindly look at the end, no give whatsoever. He meant it. Freya was taken aback by the response. Freya was taken aback by his response. It was so severe. What will you do? Radomir asked the principal. That depends what you two will do. If you two can shake hands and apologize, I'll put both of you in-school suspension for the rest of the week. At the end of it, the three of you will meet here for a mediation session, and if you can convince me this is over and won't be a problem again, that will be the end of it. If I'm not convinced, further disciplinary action is on the table. Participating in after-school activities is a privilege. Mr. Evers turned his attention fully to Radomir. Well, actually, Mr. Evers turned his attention fully to Radomir. Participating in after-school activities is a privilege. I expect more from people involved in leadership. Student. Yeah, that sounds like the kind of bullshit that. Okay, yeah, we're doing the Russian accent. I really want to get calls from like an angry Russian person to get it. Oh yeah, shout out. Yeah, it isn't. I'm actually like, you would think that editing a novel would be kind of boring, but this is just like a really chill thing to do. You can just have it on in the background. Um, there's no like loud music or dudes getting fragged or anything like that. It's just me talking, like slowly struggling to make something beautiful. And like to me, that's relaxing. But it's also very difficult. I'm the one struggling right there. Although there are people in the audience who are like eagle-eyed, looking out for the errors and everything in this, and God bless them because they're doing the Lord's work right there. When she'd walked into the office, Freya had been fairly sure Radomir would never apologize. She hadn't expected Mr. Evers to wield the fear of punishment so effectively. She watched Radomir and Jane shake hands and apologize to each other, and then to her. They really did seem sorry. Wow, yeah, a lot of text editors here. Verdglas Marie. So Creole question calls Kaktabul. So earlier in the story, we have an instance of like Russian profanity. So I've done a little research on this character. So this character, his family is from the Czech Republic, and then when he was like about 5 or 6 years old, he moved to Russia. And pretty soon after his family was living in Moscow, he became very interested in ballet. And now he's probably about 16 or 17 years old and like very interested in ballet. He wants to go to Columbia and live in New York City and become a dancer. So there's a scene a little bit earlier where he gets into a sort of like a shouting match with this guy, and he tells him to go onto a dick or go onto a cock, which I understand to be like sort of a Russian version of go fuck yourself, but I have no idea how to pronounce it. So we are looking for like a Russian who can set us straight on the right pronunciation for go onto a dick. I can show you the Cyrillic at some point if you're interested, but it's like even through it, if they had given me like Korean or Japanese or didn't I help with that? Iri Nahui. Oh, was that it? It's like Iri Nahui. Iri Nahui. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what if Iri Nahui is right, but it sounds right. I think we need to get an actual Russian in here. Spathiwa. Yeah. Iri Nahui. Iri Nahui. I have no idea if that. I'm just gambling. But yeah, like that's one note where before assuming that I whether I edit or not, I guess we need to get a Russian speaker in here to I just went into Google to translate how to say "how dare you." I mean, it makes context in the story, but they really did seem sorry. Mr. Evers filled out the paperwork sending both to ISS for the week. He asked Freya to wait in his office while he walked Radomir and Jane over. It seemed like forever until he returned. The weight on her grew heavier and heavier as she stared out the window. The rain was through. The sky was pale and cloudless. I was really hoping not to see you again for a while, Mr. Evers said when he returned. The words struck her, and she had to force herself to lift her head up and respond. If she didn't, things would get worse. I tried to walk away, Freya said, and he nodded. Again, you're not in trouble. We're just concerned about you. You weren't really planning to expel Radomir, were you? She asked. I might have, if he'd been stubborn. I'm glad I didn't have to. Let's focus on you, please. How's the therapy going? Good. It's helping, Freya said, but of course that was a lie. The therapy had done nothing. It was all the star ball. Her mind had been boiling with thoughts of her locker and how she would get the star ball out of it. Her mind had been boiling with thoughts of her locker and how she would get the star ball out of it. She'd been imagining a suit of armor made out of aluminum foil, using barbecue tongs to retrieve the starball and sealing it back inside the meteorite with duct tape, just in case everyone didn't already think she was insane. Yeah, so I think didn't already tracks better than already didn't. Real talk. Real talk. Just in case everyone didn't already think she was insane. There we go. That's better. But she knew she wouldn't actually go through with that. It was far more likely she would just never open the locker again. Considering it, she began to worry about the starball heating up until it went China syndrome and melted right. Uh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I want something here. Was that track? She pictured it melting through the thin metal door and rolling down the hallway after her, white hot for revenge. Oh, I like that. Yeah, it's a little wonky in terms of a sentence construct right there. So this is that like this sentence. She pictured it melting through the thin metal door and rolling down the hallway after her, white hot for revenge. So I think saying white hot for revenge there is something that like it wouldn't like a non-native English speaker is not going to pick this up. It requires some inference to pick it up there. But I like it. I like the idea of it conjures a mental picture. God, you can just imagine a bunch of sentient marbles like rolling down a hallway, just annihilating somebody, just clumping to them and spinning their way into their flesh. It's gangsta. Yeah, like I definitely want to see some nano marble assassins happening here. Mr. Evers caught her drifting. He sat and watched. Uh, let's see. Freya. Freya pictured it melting through the thin metal door and rolling down the hallway after her, white hot for revenge. Mr. Evers caught her drifting. He sat and watched until she returned, his face heavy with worry. So we use heavy a little too much in our description right here. Spits the marbles out of her mouth. I think my favorite Weird Al line ever, and I'm not, a fan. Like when I was like 14 or 15, I used to listen to Weird Al all the time, and my favorite one of his lines, like in my top 3 or 4 favorite, I guess, of his lines, is his cover of "Smells Like Teen Spirit," where he's like, "It's hard to meow meow wow with all these marbles in my mouth. Oh no, oh no, oh no." In the video, all these marbles are coming out of his mouth. Oh, oh, love it. Shouts to grunge right there. Yeah, I will tell you that nobody paints the wall with their brain with a shotgun like Kurt Cobain in this novel. That's a spoiler. No shotgunning. So yeah, if you're worried about it, you don't have to. His face was lined with worry. His face was turgid with worry. His face was his face lined with worry. Tight with worry. Yeah, we'll just stick with weight. Maybe we'll call it a theme. Racked with worry. Yeah, well, so the word racked is so extreme that you really want to imagine that somebody is getting a fucking pulled on a rack, like actually getting ripped limb from limb on a rack. So yeah, like it should just be an agony, but this is more like a look of concern. Like, what does it look like? Yeah, I want to stick with the weight part of it there, but weighed down with worry. Oh, huh. Weighed down. Mr. Evers caught her drifting. He sat and watched until she returned, his face weighed down with worry. Yeah, I don't know why that just weighed down. Um, like part of it is it sounds a little bit like way down. Like we're let's gonna go way down into the abyss. So there's a little bit of that homophone thing happening there. And there's no reason when you're writing to be homophobic, because homophones are like a neat way that you can convey two things at once. Because the person is like the person who's reading this, is hearing a little bit of it in their internal monologue, and especially if we're doing an audiobook. So you get to kind of convey two things at once. And so as long as we're cognizant, like the sort of subliminal way down, descending, along with the real meaning, his face weighed down with worry. Both of those, like even if we just wrote his face weighed down with worry, it tracks a little bit. So I like those things where we can kind of cram a lot into a sentence by addressing not just what is heard, but what is misheard. So that's always like super fun. So Spathiwa says, I like the efficiency of heavy with worry, but weighed down might be a better tempo. And it is indeed a better tempo and just has like subtle extra note of despair in it that I like there. So we used blenched a little bit earlier in the story where a character blenches after his best friend calls him like a fag or something. So we only, blench is a word you can only use once in a novel, right? So just in terms of like frequency in the English language, there are some very rare words that you get to use just once in a novel. Like we were looking at the word concupiscent a little bit earlier. You can use that word exactly one time in a book. And when you use it, you know that about 95% of readers are like holding down their thumb on the fucking Amazon thing to be like, all right, what does that mean? And so we would only want to use a word like that if we had like a really strong meaning. Blench falls into that category right there, where most people don't use the word blench in their everyday. So yeah, there's like an economy of words that we want to use. We only want to make somebody learn a new word if I think it is the perfect word for a situation and absolutely conveys what we want to have. And we're doing that for the reader that already knows that word. You know, it's not my job to teach people vocabulary words. In the cases where somebody already knows that word, you got to think about like what percentage of people are going to know this word, like your average reader and so forth. In some cases, it's going to be like 5% of people know that word. But if 5% of people know a word and it is the perfect word for something, then I'm willing to take that gamble. I'm much happier that it slows down one line of text for 95% of people, and one person is like, oh, it's fucking perfect. And an example doesn't spring to mind, but if I see one as we're going through the text of like a word that is like an unusual word that is perfect, I will call it out there. But that's my theory on it. And in any case, I don't proclaim to be an expert, but that's how I feel about big old words, those $6 words. So like, yeah, like some people call them like $1 million words, but you know, like, or college boy words or whatever the fuck, you know. Like I'm mainly writing, this is mainly aimed at an audience of women from age about 14 to, I think the smartest woman that would read this was probably in her like 35. After that, they're not going to put up with my bullshit. So that's our target audience right there. So when we think about that, that's about the vocabulary range that we would like to be into, and those are the themes that we're going to mostly deal with there. Now, that's not to say that older women won't like this. It's just that most of them have like sufficient life experience and experience with relationships and so forth, where my attempts to portray a relationship will be very trivial to them. Yeah, I mean, unless we do really well. Anyhow, so I like this. Mr. Evers caught her drifting. He sat and watched until she returned, his face weighed down with worry. So, you want to tell me what's actually going on here? I mean, just with, with you. I think I have a pretty good handle on what happened in the hallway this morning. So I think with you doesn't quite hit the mark. So, do you want to tell me what's actually going on here? I just mean with you. I think with you, I think I have a pretty good, oh yeah, I like that better. So, do you want to tell me what's actually going on here? With you, I think I have a pretty good handle on what happened in the hallway this morning. Better. It's even dumber than it seems. Dan and I literally just talked to each other and he gave me a ride home. We're not into each other. Jane went crazy over nothing. Sounds familiar, Mr. Evers said. Freya frowned at him, wondering if he was implying she was crazy and he was tired of dealing with her. Typical high school relationship stuff, he added, seeing her look. How was Jane doing otherwise? She's been really off the rails since her parents got divorced. Her mom's been in China since June, and her dad works all the time. I'm going to talk with Mr. Yang. Jane's been having a tough year academically. I get the feeling she could really use some help from her friends to get her back on track. Well, I really can't help you there. Obviously, we aren't friends anymore. You might be again, Mr. Evers offered. You might be again, Mr. Evers offered. Oh, she told me to kill myself in front of a crowd of people because a guy she likes gave me a ride home. I think I'll pass. Okay, that's totally reasonable. I'd just keep an open mind. Okay, Freya, that's totally reasonable. I'd just keep an open mind. Jane really does regret what she said. She's going to feel terrible about this for a long time. Okay, Freya, that's totally reasonable. I just keep an open mind. Jane really does regret what she said. She's going to feel terrible about this for a long time. She should, Freya said. She didn't want to explain the rest. She wasn't about to tell the principal Jane was getting high and probably hooking up with Malcolm Lewis. Freya considered telling him about Malcolm crashing the party, calling her names, and almost getting into a fight, but then she really would be a snitch on top of everything else. Dan Gregulus is a good kid. He's going places, Mr. Evers began, changing the topic when he saw she would not budge. I know it may not seem like it at the moment, but you are too. You have tremendous potential, Freya. Okay, so one thing, I'm peppering in her name more. Oh, speaking of which, I got to take more of this snake oil right here. Shoutouts to Niagen, doesn't do anything. I saw Spudnute in the chat mourning the fact that I'm one of those few people who's immune to the effects of NAD. It may just be like I get enough of the precursors of NAD or whatever in my diet. So I'm like, putting a hat on a hat. Oh, what do we got right here? Shoutouts to Rec 2003. So is 2003 the year you were born or the year you graduated? In either case, welcome to the stream. This is a live editing stream. I am a big famous science fiction writer, and we're editing my 8th novel right now. We've been doing it for 32 days straight without a break. And for those of you seeing me popping pills on stream, it is just a nutritional... oh, you graduated in 2003. Okay, cool. I would have potentially graduated in the year 2000, but I was thrown out of high school for running a gambling ring. And that's not an exaggeration. One of many things that I got suspended from school. The mic is amazing, by the way. Yeah, so This is a Electro Voice RE20. Sometimes on stream you'll hear me on just like a regular microphone, and I sound pretty okay there because I've been broadcasting for more than 20 years now. But really, the secret to this microphone is that I have a really amazing preamp associated with it. Give me 1 second, and if you're interested, I can show you what we're working with over there. Really, like the preamplification for broadcast, the preamplification compression stage is super important. So let me get, yeah, I'll get over to across the room here. And then I think I can just do this right here. Right here, yeah. So
if you look
if you look
over
over there,
that's really the secret to a lot of this.
That is a AirTools X2 processor over there. And it really get out of here, intro. Oh, I think now when we swap to the main thing, it just automatically does the intro. But yeah, that's a Symmetrix AirTools X2. There's a new version of that out, which I will like eventually buy when I need to add more channels to my broadcast there. But that unit cost like about new. It was somewhere around $2,500. I was able to get it for I think $600 or $700 on eBay. And there were like a few things wrong with it, but there were things I was able to fix. Yeah, it really is like an amazing voice processor. And the main things that it's doing there's like a little bit of EQ happening, about a small presence boost at around 5 kilohertz, which is there for intelligibility. We're talking like very small, maybe less, maybe like a little under 3 decibels. 3 decibels is like sort of where people can hear it. People hear generally in increments of about 3 decibels because it's a logarithmic scale. So another thing that it's doing is what's called an expander, which is where it turns on the audio channel when it detects audio. And so the rest of the time where there's nothing going on in periods of silence and so forth, it very gently closes that gate. And this is really important because I don't want to hear like background noise in our periods of silence. And this unit is very good at doing that. The other important thing is that it supplies a very clean and very powerful signal. If you buy normally a preamplifier or something like that, probably when you go to buy it, they will sell you what's called a cloud lifter, which is to supply additional, it basically takes phantom power from an audio channel and pumps it into your audio thing so that it applies like about 20 decibels of additional gain, because these microphones are very quiet. They're dynamic microphones, which are great for broadcasting, but they just, they're very quiet, and generally like mixing boards are not powerful enough to drive them on the built-in preamps or whatever. So yeah, if you run a stream yourself and there's anything that you would like to know about microphones for streaming, I know a fair bit about them. Most people in the like professional world either work with one of these RE20s, which I'm a fan of, or Shure, I think they're like SMB7s or whatever, the ones that Joe Rogan uses. Those are good for different reasons. But for my way, like if you watch Alex Jones, he uses this microphone, and you'll see. I was watching some sports announcer program the other day, and they had the microphone, and I knew like both the microphone that he had and this little screen that's on it there, the pop filter on it. It was one that we used to use on my radio show. They don't make them any longer. Anyhow, obviously, I can go on about microphones for a long time because I'm drinking a bunch of coffee, and it means that I get to stop working. But maybe that guy even left the chat, and I'm just rattling on about microphones for the longest time. But yeah, anyhow, we do this stream every day, and we're trying to do so there's this new editing method I have where we read all the stuff, because I'm trying to both get better at narrating and get better at editing, both things where I could use a lot of improvement, even as I've been doing both for a very long time. So Dan Gregulus is a good kid. He's going places, Mr. Evers began, changing the topic when he saw she would not budge. I know it may not seem like it at the moment, but you are too. You have tremendous potential, Freya. It's not my business what either of you do. Just please stay safe. You both have your whole lives ahead of you. Now she felt the first clear emotion she'd felt since. Now Freya felt the first clear emotion she'd had since she steeled the. Now Freya felt the first clear emotion she'd had since she sealed. Yeah. Oh my God, this is such a Sally sells seashells by the seashore type situation. Now Freya felt the first clear emotion she'd had since sealing the star ball in her locker. Anger. I said nothing happened and I meant it. I don't have anything to hide. Dan goes to the same therapist as me. That's what we talked about. He's a really good guy. Freya's words came out much more severe than she intended, and Mr. Evers paused, nodding with his bottom lip tight. Okay, I apologize. That's just one of the things I need to say, just in case. Just one of those things? Okay, I apologize. That's something I need to say, just in case. Yeah, I like that better. Just one of those things. That's something I need to say, just in case. Mm-hmm. So we had a moment where I was like, huh, would he like refer her? In fact, oh, okay, so uh, ooh, so when he says stay safe, or when he says stay safe, right? So the implication here is he's talking about them using contraception. But this guy is like a straight Catholic. Okay, I like that a little bit better, right? So we know a little bit later that she. So this is a situation. It's not my business what either of you do. Just try to take things slowly. You both have your lives, whole lives ahead of you. Okay, cool. So we take out. You'll never regret waiting. Okay, so oh god, like so many parts of my writing are stolen from the life of this woman that I was like in a very close relationship with for about 4 years. So this is something that was taken directly. Her mother used to say to her every year, once a year, they would have like a sex chat, and she'd say, "Well, you'll never regret waiting." And then after, uh, she remembers the point where her mom just stopped giving her this chat. And I think it was right around when they discovered she had been secretly seeing me. Oh God, maybe it was prior to that. But yeah, and just where her mother like acknowledged, okay, it's like okay, my daughter is out fucking. Um, but yeah, that just struck me as like a very interesting, and it makes sense too because that's like one of my only experiences with people who are relatively religious in terms of raising their children. And there's something like kind of sweet about like the mother like assuming like, oh, like I'll just keep telling my daughter, stay pure and so forth. And the daughter is out there, having the time of her life and being a human being with all the flaws and everything associated with it. So I like this little change right here, where he says you'll never regret waiting. Then that feeds more into his character being a Catholic. Because I was thinking about going the other direction, like being like, if you see the school nurse, there's free contraception. Yeah, somebody who was like a devout Catholic would not make that offer. So that's a tiny little point, right? That will be lost on a lot of people. Maybe the people in the stream will be the only people that ever notice this. But if we try to get every little detail right, we'll miss less stuff. God, fucking FNet is splitting like crazy. I've just entered this topic like 10 different times. I mean, it's my own fault for not running a bot to do this. Okay. I said nothing happened and I meant it. I don't have anything to hide. Dan goes to the same therapist as me. That's what we talked about. He's a really good guy. Freya's words came out much more severe than she intended, and Mr. Evers paused, nodding with his bottom lip tight. So Rec 2003 says, how many books have you written? This is my 8th book right here. And all of my books that have been published are available for free on my website. You can go to zachzyz.com. And then the EPUBs are available for free. We also have the Kindle versions there. One or two of these, I think just a couple of the things that I've written, you can see me narrating them. And I'm much fatter on the stream when you see me narrating them because I lost a bunch of weight between here and there. I'm still losing a fair bit of weight. But anyhow. So, yeah, I've written about 5 books. I usually recommend, if somebody is getting into my work for the first time, that you'll want to start off with the book's survival mode. It's about 80 pages long. It's a short little thing. It's about a spaceman marooned on an alien world. That's the first book I put out, and people seem to like that one the best. Yeah, give it a shot. And if you do any of your own writing or whatever, I'm happy to take a gander at the stuff that you're working on. But usually I try not to offer criticism for people because I'm very mean, as you'll see as we go through. Okay, I apologize. That's the kind of thing I need to say, just in case. I was aware of the therapist connection. I just needed to respect Dan's privacy, the same as I would yours. Just as a heads up, I'm going to speak with Dr. Garbuglio about the situation here at school. We tried to contact your mother, but she's not answering her cell phone. Okay, so this is kind of a blob of a paragraph. Okay, I apologize. He says okay so much, and that's not a point where we would consider this word repetition. A lot of administrators and people like in these roles will just constantly equivocating. Okay. Things are going to be just fine. Like it's a situation where people's threshold for repetition of the word okay is much higher than their threshold for the repetition of other words. Okay doesn't start to lose its meaning until you're repeated about 10 times. Just because we're so used to, this is a word that people will use very frequently. And it's probably like one of the most common words that you'll hear coming out of people's mouths, like on the street. Okay, all right. That kind of thing. Okay, I apologize. That's just something I need to say. That's just something I need to say. That's something I need to say, just in case. I was aware of the therapist connection. I just need to respect Dan's privacy, the same as I would yours. On that topic, I'm going to speak with Dr. Garbuglio about the situation here at school. We've tried to contact your mother, but she's not answering her cell phone. She's hiking, probably no reception. There's probably no reception. When will she return? Saturday, Freya replied, though she had no clue. She was aware she just locked herself into a problem. If Lassa didn't return by Saturday, she might need to report the whole thing to someone. She probably needed to do that anyway. Yeah, mouth's getting like all mealy here. Yeah, it's that NAD with the saliva gains. When will she return? Saturday, Freya replied, though she had no clue. She was aware she just locked herself into a problem. If Lassa didn't return by Saturday, she might need to report the whole thing to someone. She probably needed to do that anyway. You're on your own for an entire week? Mr. Evers asked, looking a little incredulous. Why not? I'm 16. I have something to do almost every night anyway. Guitar practice tonight, Krav Maga Wednesday, therapy Thursday. Even if Lassa were home, I'd barely see her. It's not a big deal. Mr. Evers had a clouded expression. She didn't need Selig's telepathy to realize he didn't approve. The same way he didn't approve of her not going to church. For all of his shrugging, it's not my business what either of you do, he was judging her. There was a scoreboard in his mind running all the time, keeping track of who was a good little Catholic and who wasn't. She could tell him right now she'd been thinking about going to church, and he would swell up with joy and say something safe and equivocal while his expression shouted approval. but Freya couldn't summon the effort to pretend. Mr. Evers drew a deep breath and settled behind his desk, filling out a form. Freya stared at the top of his bald head. Freya stared at his bald spot. Ever since she'd finished dying inside, she kept trying to figure... His head was down, and Freya stared at his bald spot. Ever since she'd finished dying inside, she was trying to picture what other people were thinking, wishing she could read their minds. What would it be like to walk around like Mr. Evers? Oh, yeah, so that sentence has got to get fixed. What would it be like to be Mr. Evers? What would it be like thinking as Mr. Evers, with that whole orthodox apparatus sitting on top of her, coloring every thought? He never had to wonder what was right. All the people he'd lost were waiting for him as long as he did what he was supposed to. All he had to do was surrender and obey. She blinked, thinking about the violet sphere sitting in her locker. You can't just surrender, Lassa had told her, but she wanted to. Anywhere was better than here. Anyone was better than her. Are you okay to go back to class? Mr. Evers asked when she finished with the form. Yes, Freya lied. Damn, son. All right, well, hopefully this is not like a Starball chapter or whatever there. Okay, so chapter 44. I'm going to take like a brief minute to get up and walk around, just to like stretch out and everything. I notice getting wild. We're coming up on the 300-page mark, boys. We could do it. Whew. Okay. Shout outs to Stream Dog for giving me time to walk around and spit. I feel improved. Okay, so that chapter, some good improvements there. I'm really liking the second pass situation. That really does seem to make a marked improvement. Where we just read over it once again and try to get through the whole chapter, and inevitably get a little bogged down in the process of editing. So this is chapter 44. With leaden steps, Freya dragged herself from class to class. Everyone was looking at her strangely. She couldn't escape the thought that they all knew about this morning and they'd taken Jane's side. Everyone was looking at her strangely. She couldn't escape the thought that they all knew about this morning, and everyone had taken Jane's side. She couldn't escape the thought that everyone knew about this morning, and they'd all taken Jane's side. People liked Jane. Freya and Radomir were the weirdos now. Freya kept her eyes low during class, resisting the urge to just lie her head on the desk and close her eyes. The teachers spoke, but the words came to her distant and garbled, like they were being shouted across a rushing river that was drowning out everything. Yeah, that's not a good simile. Mm-hmm. The teachers spoke, but the words came to her distant and garbled, like they were being shouted across a river. She should have gone home, but she didn't have the energy to get on the bicycle. When she thought about taking a cab, the first thing that came to her mind was Lass's closet and Randall's gun. Better just to coast. It was better to coast. She went to the library during lunch to avoid everyone. She tried to read the paperback, but the words were just black lines on paper with no significance. She wound up locked in place. Staring at the same page about the starship pilot shocking the ship's chef. Imayo, it was better to coast. So Spanky Watt feels like it was better to coast. Needs an object. When she thought about taking a cab, the first thing that came to mind was Lass's closet and Randall's gun. It was better to coast. Yeah, it does sound weird when you say it like that. It was safer to coast through the rest of the day. All right, that's better. Uh-huh. That's actually so this is like a weird aside or whatever, but that happens in the Void Captain's Tale. There's a segment where the starship pilot fucking outrages this hoity-toity ship's chef by so Void Captain's Tale is a story on the premise that faster than light travel can happen only through female orgasm. So pilots are these women who just strap themselves into the ship and have like a tremendous orgasm, and it propels the ship some light years distant. And pilots are just these really weird kind of loner women who just form like this really strange relationship with the spaceship. So that's wild. I don't know how pertinent this is. And she kept getting halfway through the same page and drifting off. Something about the starship pilot outraging the ship's chef by ordering a cheeseburger with an egg on it. The constant hunger that had... The thought made her queasy. The constant hunger that had gnawed at Freya was gone now. That had been the starball. The idea of eating anything seemed impossible. Okay, that was why we had that aside about... I was like, why did I put this in there? Or whatever. But I wanted to display that she was no longer suffering like this ravenous hunger. And that was why it wasn't just like a non sequitur, I think. I'm going to act like I know what I'm doing here. Freya needed to call Mr. Mathis and tell him she was too sick for practice, but at the end of every period she found she couldn't. He was one of those old people who pretended text messages didn't exist. As the day went on, it was worse and worse to cancel on such short notice. Oh, you ever have that thing happen where you're like dreading going to something and it gets too late to cancel on somebody? You're like, fuck, now I'm locked into this. She knew how he would sound, bitter and let down. She'd been trying so hard and practicing so much. It seemed impossible she had been looking forward to seeing him tonight. Impossible she'd been looking forward to anything. Instead, she just took a long time packing up at the end of each class, so no one had to talk to her as she walked to the next. She could see uncertainty in the faces of her teachers. They wanted to say something, but each decided against it. They knew the answer. They had to all be so tired of dealing with her, the weight in her dragging everyone else down. They had to all be so tired of dealing with her, the anchor dragging their classes down. The text from Dan she'd been dreading came just before the last period of the day. Hey, okay, so this is where we're doing this number right here. Dan. Hey, I heard what happened. Are you okay? She typed in no and then deleted it, typed it again and deleted it again. Then she sent nothing. More than anything, she didn't want to see Dan for him. More than anything, she didn't want to see Dan or be seen by him. The girl from last night was just an illusion. He would run away from the real Freya as quickly as he could, and he would be right to. She didn't reply. Freya didn't reply to the text. She sat through Mr. Mazzini's class, its words drumming against her head like drops of rubbing alcohol. Each evaporated before the next could strike. One thing finally sunk in, the words, "This will be on the test," written under the words binomial radical expressions and underlined 3 times. None of that made sense to her. Okay, this is a new paragraph. One thing finally sunk in, the words, "This will be on the test," written under the words binomial radical expressions and underlined 3 times. None of that made sense to her. How long had she been checked out of this class? She had liked math before. She had loved math last year, that burst of understanding as she figured something out, the feeling of things locking into place, everything expanding. She was going to fail that test. It wasn't like she could even study and figure out what she'd missed. Her algebra and trigonometry textbook was in her locker with the star ball. Let's just call it trig, because I think we fixed that a little earlier. Actually, no, we need to go back. Trigonometry. Yeah, we did fix that. Okay, so let's just call it trig. Her trigonometry textbook was in the locker with the star ball. Freya saw everyone taking theirs out and realized she was supposed to be working through problems now. Freya saw everyone taking theirs out and realized she was supposed to be working through problems now. She didn't have her book. She was the only one who hadn't brought their book. Mm-hmm. Freya saw everyone else taking their textbooks out and realized she was supposed to be working through problems now. She was the only one. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna change up how that goes a little bit there. So Freya saw everyone else taking their textbooks out and realized she was supposed to be working through problems now. She was the only one without a book. Mr. Mazzini's eyes fell on her, and a disappointed look crossed his face. He bent down and disappeared behind his desk, and then pulled out. Mm-hmm. Mr. Mazzini's eyes fell on her, and a disappointed look crossed his face. He bent down and disappeared behind his desk, then popped up with a textbook wrapped in green construction paper. He had a club foot and walked with an odd gait over to Freya's desk with the book. He walked over to Freya's desk with his odd gait. He had a club foot. Everyone was watching. Please remember your textbook next time, Miss Jokla, Mr. Mazzini said quietly, and everyone stared at her. The book read, Book of Shame, in giant cutout multicolored bubble letters that had been glued on. Yeah, so that's too much. Mm. Mm. Oh, shoutouts to what do we got here? A couple of people here. Shoutouts to Nordak 2019 who says Putain effin un nuggets. So I assume that's about Vladimir Putin eating chicken nuggets. Hell yeah. And then Musique Adolescent says, hello, I'm very proud of myself. For something I assume involving a baguette, but it could be anything. So yeah, let us know why you're so proud of yourself in a second here. As I try to clean up, oh God, as I try to clean up this chapter a little bit. Mais en plus, il comprend rien se bouffer de burger. Oh, is that about the burger with the egg on it there? Twitch needs to have just like a thing where I can like click and translate all your stuff. We're so close to universal translation. It's going to be amazing. Like even now, you can just go to a country and like hold up your phone and fucking translate things and have it speak for you. Oh, it's so chill. I love that. To me, comprends? No, I don't understand you at all. There, I think you're speaking French. hold on. Let's try and figure this out there. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't understand anything about this burger eater. Oh, you didn't understand about the burger eater. So his name is Gogata. Apparently, it's for joke. According, so is a Buffer de Burger, is that like calling somebody a burger clap or something like that? Like Mara Burgers or whatever? Hell yeah. All right, let's take a look here. Yeah, pleasure to meet you there. Enchanté. Uh, I was told by my new piano lessons teacher that when I sang to her, she said I sounded like Freddie Mercury when I'm 13 years old. I'm proud of myself because she teach music for I think 29 years. So our French friend says you eat a lot of burger. So fucking amazing. I agree 100%. Americans are super. I'm like way too fat. Look at all this. I don't need all that. I was eating pizza last night too. Had a bunch of beers. So people are asking where I come from, and I'm from New Orleans. So yeah, we got a lot of francophones over there. Well, congratulations to Musique Adolescent, who says that her piano teacher says that she sings like young Freddie Mercury, which is pretty gangsta, but that might have been her way of telling her you sound a little butch. So ooh, watch out there. Uh, uh, it's from a Pink Panther hamburger scene, and I'm apparently not supposed to stream it because I get copyright strike. So just putting it out there, Musique Adolescent. If you want, on my website, zachzyz.com, the story, The Right to Bear Arms, is about a piano player who loses both of their arms. So you might find that interesting. So New Orleans equals Anthony Davis, the best player. Yeah, I lived in New Orleans for a long time. I used to run a hotel right off of Bourbon Street in the Vieux Carré, the French Quarter. So she meant it in a good way. Well, that's good, man. Like, it's good to see. I wish that I had been. I will tell you right now. I wish that I had been so much more diligent in my studies with music when I was a young person. If I could go back in time, I would focus much harder on learning Spanish and much harder on practicing music and get into recording and broadcasting. Like, I just wish that I had pursued my hobbies more and spent less time doing LSD and like driving around in cars and doing pranks with my friends. I mean, those were like the super fun things. So the name of the story, you can see it at the top of the screen right over here. It's Gravid. Not Gravlox, but Gravid. And this is a long story. We're on like page 297 of our edit, and there are 786 pages to go. But yeah, so it's a good story right there. I don't have any work at all that's been translated into French. Just like, ooh, and it's a shame too, because I was in a relationship with a woman who edits translations of books into French too, and she really liked me, and I just wound up breaking it up with her. So Nordak 2009, or what was his name there? Gogata. Oh, actually, it's Gotaga. Gotaga says that's a lot of fucking letter, and I agree. It is a lot of fucking letter right there. Yeah, I like this French dude. Yeah, sorry you got muted for 10 seconds. That's not me. It's just the automatic bot there. Uh, apparently, it doesn't like it when you curse. I don't know. It's just a thing that they have on that bot for some reason. But yeah, I don't know exactly why that's working out there. Okay, trigonometry textbook. Please remember your textbook next time, Miss Jokla, Mr. Mazzini said quietly, and everyone stared at her. The homemade dust jacket. Uh, the The construction paper dust jacket said, oh yeah, homemade is better. The homemade dust jacket said, Book of Shame in giant letters written in marker. Normally, Mr. Mazzini made a big joke about it. So Musique Adolescent says, I have technically 3 months to learn a Queen song to impersonate at my middle school talent show because the tryouts start at around April. Well, which song did you pick? My favorite Queen song is probably Killer Queen, because I like the Dynamite with a Laser Beam song. They got a bunch of good songs there. Hold on, let's take a look at the top Queen songs. I will tell you, if you want to win the talent show, do Fat Bottom Girls. That's just it. That is absolutely the one. Oh, so Killer Queen's on the top. You could also potentially win that contest with Crazy Little Thing Called Love. Ooh, Under Pressure is a really good one. Let's see, Beyond Classic Rock here. Top 10 Queen songs. No, Stone Cold Crazy is a good one. I don't even remember Tie Your Mother Down. Killer Queen is pretty dope. Yeah, I would say Fat Bottom Girls would probably be the winner, but a live version of Somebody to Love. Okay. Yeah, man. Whatever you do it like your heart do what your heart says to you. But if you just want to win that contest, I know a little bit about what high school students like, and Fat Bottom Girls is going to get like some of those large girls in the scene, like, yeah, and all the black guys will be like, also yeah, and like some of the woke white dudes will be like, all right, I can get down with that. That could be okay. And then like a lot of your teachers will also have big fat asses because teaching is not a very physical activity. So yeah, really think about your audience when you're choosing what you would like to when you're choosing what you would like to do if you want to win a contest. Like I host rap contests fairly frequently, and the people who usually win our rap contests are people who cater to their audience exclusively. Like it's as your so what is it? I keep forgetting the name of this guy. So Gataga wants us to say cheval, which I guess is some kind of curse word or something like that. Okay, I hope that makes you happy. But yeah, seriously, like, do whatever you like. But I guarantee you, I've DJ'd for like a long time. I host rap contests and stuff like that. Bottom Girls, and you know, it's like got some body positivity stuff going on there. It's a weird song for Freddie Mercury to sing because he had nothing to do with any fat bottom girls in his entire life. I guarantee it. But so it goes. The homemade dust jacket said Book of Shame in giant letters written in marker. Normally, Mr. Mazzini would have made a big joke about it, and the student would ham up being embarrassed and remember their book next time. Somehow it was so much worse when he didn't go through his routine. I'm sorry, was all she could choke out. I'm sorry, was all Freya could choke out, but he had already turned around. Yeah. But Mr. Mazzini had already turned around and started scraping back to his desk. She struggled to make sense of the lesson, flipping back in the book with mounting desperation, and only finding... She flipped back in the book with mounting desperation, only to find other lessons she had been just as zoned out for. She was going to fail this class. The feeling hammered down on her. Freya had never failed before. Her grades had been the only thing she could really cling to say that she was okay. Now that was gone, too, and all she could think about was the river. She didn't have a climbing harness, but she could just put on her heaviest coat and fill the pockets with rocks. It would be enough. It says Manzini in one place and Mazzini in the second. That's a good edit. It should be Mazzini. All right, let's go. So there's the first instance of Mazzini. Mr. Mazzini. There we go. Mr. Mazzini. Good call on. Oh, yeah. There's another Manzini. We may have other. Let's do a find and replace. Oh, yeah. Oh, I think Manzini is the right one, actually. Yeah. Okay. So Manzini is what? Mr. Manzini. I like that. Okay. All right. So what chapter were we even on? Okay. Cool. So that's my little trick for zooming around in find and replace. It should have like a fucking button to just go back. I'm sure there's a way to go back to where you were, or you just set your cursor or something and then up or down. But I just remember a word that was in there. Pardon me. I'm sorry, I was all afraid I could choke out, but Mr. Manzini had already turned around and started scraping back towards his desk. She struggled to make sense of the lesson. She flipped back in the book with mounting desperation. Finding only other lessons she had been just as zoned out for. She was going to fail this class. The feeling hammered down on her. We don't need that line. Freya had never failed before. Her grades had been the only thing she could really cling to say that she was okay. Now that was gone too, and all she could think about was the river. She didn't have a climbing harness, but she could just put on her heaviest coat and fill the pockets with rocks. It would be enough. The class ended, and she still hadn't figured out what she was supposed to be doing. Her head was full of people she was supposed to call. She was supposed to call Mr. Mathis and canceled. She was supposed to call Dr. Garbuglio and let him know she was having suicidal thoughts. She was supposed to call Dan and ask him for help. She should be calling the authorities and warning them about the star ball, but she couldn't. Okay, so it's a long list of people that she's putting off calling. Speaking of which, I got to call my parents at some point. Yeah, it's funny. Like, so much of this is just me refactoring things that have been in my own life. Like, I've definitely been that person who just stopped trying in a class, and then you have that like mounting feeling of desperation. You're like, fuck. What? Wait. When did I stop caring? And then like trying to go through it, and that sort of sinking, desperate feeling that you were going to fail a class. Oh, it's rough. It was probably like I stopped having dreams about high school, like maybe when I was like 25 or 28 or something like that. You just, all these dreams would still pop up for like the longest time. High school really has like a strong emotional effect on people. Like, I don't have dreams about elementary school or middle school or any of that shit there. But definitely like high school kind of sunk its teeth into me for like a long time. But she couldn't. Everyone was getting up to leave. They all looked so enthusiastic to be anywhere else. Freya was the last one in class, and she knew Mr. Mazzini was staring at her. She shut the book and started to cry silently. A big fat teardrop hit the construction paper Book of Shame cover and soaked into it. She tried to pull it together, but she failed at that too. She hid her face in her arms and sobbed against her desk. I can't do it. I can't, she wept, the words muffled against her jacket. Mr. Manzini's hand was on a shoulder that felt so removed she could barely... Mr. Mazzini's hand was on a shoulder that felt so removed she could barely register it as her own. She cried until Mr. Mazzini's hand was on a shoulder that felt so removed she could barely register it as an arm. See, that's not a good line. Should Book of Shame be italicized like the other? That's an interesting question. So generally, you only italicize the covers of published works. In the case of somebody writing Book of Shame on a marker, it's much more appropriate, IMO, for it to be capitalized. So let's see how we do. Yeah, Book of Shame right there. We have it in quotes there because it says Book of Shame right there. So it's appropriate to put in quotation marks there. And then it's also appropriate not to put in quotation marks here because it's not saying something there. Yeah, like it's like a complicated bit of jargon, and that's one where I may absolutely be wrong. But let's not focus on that. That's a proofreader question more than me, and I do think that I'm right at the moment. I can't do it. I can't. She wept. Mm-hmm. I don't. I think we should just cut that. Hey, 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 Mr. Mazzini kept saying. It's okay. The world was bleary with tears. Her nose was running down her face, and Mr. Manzini scraped to his desk and brought her a wad of Kleenex. I'm sorry, she said, trying to clean herself up. At least she was too numb to feel embarrassed, though she already knew it would come later. At least she was too numb to feel embarrassed. That would come later. I shouldn't have given you that. I shouldn't have given you that. I'm so sorry, Freya, Mr. Manzini said. He tore the cover off the Book of Shame, balled it up, and threw it at the trash can across the room, missing completely. I don't know what I was thinking. Please forgive me. No, it's all my fault. I just can't think. I can't concentrate at all. I shouldn't be here. I'm sorry for messing up your class. You're not messing up anything. It's perfectly natural for you to have difficulty. I know you're trying your best, Mr. Manzini said, and that made her start crying again. Her best was staring off into space and weeping in class. It took a while to get herself together, and when Mr. Manzini uncertainly asked her if she wanted him to call someone, she shook her head. I just want to go home, she said, and he nodded. It will get better, I promise you, he said. She knew he was wrong. Mm-hmm. Freya stared at the text again and told herself she could make it home. She told herself if she could just make it home, she would be able to answer it. Her only chance for making it through the guitar lesson was to try and run beforehand, though she had no idea how she would make herself do that. She had to walk past her locker on the way to the bike wrap, and she stopped outside it for a moment, trying to see if she could feel anything, but there was only emptiness. Her insides sobbed out and raw. There was only emptiness. Her insides were sobbed out and raw. The wind blasted her as she opened the door to the bike racks, and she remembered her jacket and gloves were in the locker. Could she even make it back without them? Her bicycle was still the only one on the rack, and right away she could see something was wrong. The tires were both flat, and the seat was all ripped up. Someone had slashed her tires. Freya stood there, stunned. She looked around, her hand clenched into a fist, and the thought boomed in her mind. Thinking about Randall's gun. Who had done it? Jane, Tammy, Malcolm. For the second time today, she felt anger, and now it burned in her empty stomach. She wanted to scream. But that was what whoever had done this wanted. They wanted her to react. They wanted to scream at her. They wanted to scream at her in the hallway. They wanted to throw rocks at her through windows and give her black eyes and call her a snitch in front of everyone. Randall had taken her to the range. She'd fired that gun before. She could take them all with her, all of them, and it burned. Oh, wow. This is really like a school shooter moment right here. Randall had taken her to the range. She'd fired that very gun before. Oh, shoutouts to... oh, wow. So that's Lucan Varsi, which to me, Lucan Varsi, is that Estonian? All right, help me out here. Lucan Varsi. I always wonder if people are foreign or they're just names that they made up there. But shout out to, yeah, welcome to the stream. We're editing this novel. We've been doing it for 32 days straight, every morning, early in the morning. And shout outs to Dylan and Eric, according to Lions right there. So Lions, what was the story with that song you wanted us to play? Was that like a song that you did on the show on Friday night? Or what was the story with that? I tried to play it, but it was just too late. What does it sound like? Estonian was close. Oh, is it like, I would say like, when I looked at it, I was like, it's somewhere touching like the Baltic Sea. You know what I mean? So, maybe like Finland, maybe Latvian, maybe Estonian. That's what I thought. So, in 3D from MD. Oh, so in 3D made that? All right, cool. Yeah, in 3D is a wild one. I'm sorry we couldn't give him like a full shake. It was just like the wrong timing or whatever for that song. And honestly, the only things that we really play on that show are songs that are like 2 minutes long. If you watch like after about 2 minutes, I just zone out because I'm like completely ADD with it there. She'd fired Randall's gun many times before at the range. Sounds Finnish. It was Finnish, yeah. So Lucan Varsi. Yeah, I wrote this myself. I'm a novelist. I will tell you that the entire family in this is Finnish. This girl's mother's name is Lassa. They work at a company called Hedenkorno, and they eat that. They make Jortelju cookies, or those like pinwheel Christmas cookies. And they eat that salty licorice. I forget what his name is. It's like Samaki or Samayaki or whatever. Yeah, her mother's name is Lassa. I think their last name is Jokla.
So yeah, for whatever reason, the family was written as being from Finland, and her mother actually has a. We'll get into that a little bit later. I don't want to spoil too much here, but yeah, like so this girl is Finnish in the story. So just shout outs to Finland right there. A lot of respect for that country. Shout outs to the Winter War right there. Hell yeah. Strong people in Finland. But I digress. But that was what whoever had done this wanted. They wanted her to react. They wanted to scream at her in the hallway. They wanted to throw rocks through windows and give her black eyes and call her a snitch in front of everyone. Samaki, how did I come up with the idea? This is really inspiring. So this book began in America, and sometimes some other countries do this too. But in November, we have this thing called NaNoWriMo, where everybody will spend a month trying to write every day and just write a novel. And in fact, I'll probably do that challenge on stream in November of this year. So we have this thing, NaNoWriMo. And the idea there is you try to write a novel in a month by writing about 2,500 words a day, which is more than I usually have time to write. Let's see. So anyhow, like this idea just kind of popped up to me. I think I just started writing like a sad story, and I got about 10,000 words in. I was like, okay, cool. So being Finnish explains all the weird things, such as having an extremely clean and organized house, outdoor hobbies that don't involve getting drunk and nearly dying. Yeah. It was like an interesting choice for the whole thing. So yeah, shout outs to trying to write a novel. I have lots of advice for somebody trying to write their first novel. So let me know if it's your first novel. If you've written novels before, you don't need my advice. But yeah, I have I have many yeah, that sounds accurate. Yeah, I've got a few friends from Finland, and it's like at least partly based on my experiences with them. She could take them all with her. She'd fired Randall's gun many times before. She was a good shot. She could take them all with her. The idea burned in her so bitterly that she nearly threw up. She looked around at the cars below. Was one of them Malcolm's? Was the whole pack of them waiting around the corner, hoping to see her crying? They were too late. She had nothing left to give. She had nothing left. Did they actually think they could scare her? She was more of a threat to herself than all of them put together. She was getting cold staring at her savage bicycle. She took out her phone and took pictures of everything, getting a closer look at the damage. At least they hadn't messed up the shifters. New tires, new tubes, a new seat. She could do it all herself. She would bring tools tomorrow and fix the bicycle right in front of everyone in the afternoon. Let them know she didn't care at all. She glanced around for any clue of who had done it, and her eyes settled on the camera right over the door. Of course. They were so stupid. Hell yeah. Shout out to Jiro right there. Okay. So it's my first novel. I have a small clue about what I will write, but I really need to build the plot. Okay. So if I can give you like a few pieces of advice right there, places where I see people messing up when they're trying to write their first novel. Okay. First, I recommend everybody doing their first novel shoot for a length of about 50,000 words. 50,000 words is just about 180 or so pages, right? It's very tempting to do something longer, and don't feel bad at all if you come in shorter. Like if you come in around 30,000 words, great. You know, it's much better to have something that is tight and relatable at 30,000 words than to try and put out like a 100,000 word novel as your first novel. You will regret it. You will be like me, having to edit every day for 100 days to get through something. So shorter is better. I don't know if you're going to write in Finnish or in English. If you're writing in English, definitely pick up a copy of William Strunk's Elements of Style and read through it prior to setting out to write your novel. In terms of planning or plotting out the novel, some people find it very helpful to write up sort of like a character sheet for each of your primary characters. Some people find it helpful to outline the plot. Some people find it helpful to make like a list of different scenes that they want to have in the book and work towards having those particular scenes. I personally don't do any of that stuff. I like to just sit down and write and then try to put everything together later, which I think is really fun, but you will have to pay a price in like editing for longer later to make everything to be a good thing. The most important thing to do, if you would like to complete a novel, is to sit down and write every single day. So have a time every day set aside for writing, to always be there at that time, and internet turned off, phone turned off, nothing else, just like paper or a computer in front of you, and don't be able to like tab to the internet, don't have Discord open, don't do anything else but write. Just you and the black screen. A lot of people, when they're first starting off in their writing career, there will be days where they just stare at that black screen and they don't do anything else. They don't write anything, or they just noodle around, or they don't get anything important done. That's great. Those days starts to bloom onto the page. It really just is as simple as being like, there is a time every day where for an hour, I'm going to do nothing but write, and nothing else can intrude on that time. In my case, I needed to go out to like a coffee shop every day to do it. But yeah, that's how you get big programming things. That's how Jira gets programming things, that you just have to have that time set aside. Like right now, right here, this is the time that I have set aside. I don't do anything else but edit every morning for about 2 or 3 hours. And I can do that because I've been writing for 20 years. It takes time to build up the stamina because you're really using a part of your mind that people do not use every day. And you'll start to like feel the heat as your brain is overloading as you're working on this. So that's like a practice that will really bear fruit for the vast majority of people, just having that time set aside where nobody's going to disrupt you. There's no phone, there's no internet, nothing but you and the work. The final thing that I always caution people is don't tell anybody about your project until it's done, right? If people are like, oh, what's it about or whatever, it's like, oh, like it's a secret. People are so much more interested in it's a secret than they are in you like giving like this labored explanation of your plot and it doesn't make sense or anything. Just hey, it's a secret. And then you don't tell them anything else about it, right? This serves two purposes. One, the people will wonder about what you're doing. And then two, when you tell somebody about a project that you would like to do, it activates like that same reward center in your brain as if you've done it. And you will trick yourself into thinking that you have done work that you have not done. You will never get anything done. Shout outs to Dark Mage. Yeah, very, very important to not tell people about your project, because people will have ideas about your project and those ideas are not your ideas. And some people will be like, oh, that's kind of cool. And you'll be like, well, why don't they think that's cool? Right? And you will focus on their opinion of it. You'll get nothing done. People are wonderful once you get through a project in terms of giving you ideas and telling you things that don't work out and so forth. People have no business working on your project prior to it being done. In some cases, you'll get stuck and need to ask somebody for help. That's okay. Try not to do that if you can. Try to just make something that is your own. And then the last thing, it's about a year of time working like that to get your first novel done in a way that you're happy with. So like the final thing there is just, I tell most people, one, don't expect to make any money with a book. Very, very few books make any sort of money. And two, your first book is really writing for yourself, right? So don't be afraid to take big chances. Don't think about what other people are going to think about this book. Don't think about your audience or anything. Just write the book that you want to read. There will be time to think about the audience in later books when you are more skilled. So that's my advice for new writers. I've not been like a super successful writer myself, so I don't want to come across as an expert or whatever, but those are the things that I truly believe about writing. So I might write it in Finnish because I do not feel comfortable with English grammar. Thank you for the tip. I could go to the library and write about 2 hours. It'd be more beneficial since at home there was no silence. Absolutely. Just go to the library every day. And the thing about going somewhere every day to write is that you'll see people and like become familiar with them by seeing them every day. And sometimes like I've made like a bunch of friends just by hanging out in coffee shops every day and writing, just because people see me every day and they don't think like, oh, here's this giant weird looking dude. They're like, oh, I know that guy. He just fucking pecks away at his laptop every day, probably writing porno. And it's true, but the it's a good way to go about it. So important for me was to remove myself from like my natural environment and get out somewhere where I could just concentrate. And for me, coffee shops were that place. But if you have a library that's quiet, definitely go for that. And you can't just like leap from not doing this every day to being like we do this every day, but slowly work yourself towards it with the goal of every day I will do this thing and you will be able to finish. Good luck. All right. And speaking of being able to finish, I need to finish this chapter. Freya shook her head and walked back inside. And went back inside, walking past the auditorium where the choir people were working. Freya shook her head and went back inside, walking past the auditorium where the choir people were warming up. It was just so much effort. She would have to go to the office. Everyone would have another reason to call her a snitch. Mr. Evers would get mad. Officer Ed would be called in. It would be another big deal. Okay. So let's pause there for a second. Out of coffee, man. It's not good. It would be another big deal. She had a low whispering urge that she had a low whispering urge. No, that's the wrong word. She had a low whispering thought that she could just go home without telling anyone about this. She could call a cab. She could just call a cab. She could call a cab. The bike could just sit there, rusting on the rack all winter until they cut the lock and threw it away. She wouldn't be there to see it. Freya slipped the phone out of her pocket. She had an excuse to call Mr. Mathis now. But she was too upset to talk. The anger was still burning beneath every breath she took. Randall's gun. She tried to push the thought away. Better to just disappear. But then she realized if they found her, they would think she'd killed herself over a stupid bicycle. So people ask, our Finnish friend says, how many books have you written yourself? What time is the best for you when it comes to writing? So I've written 8 books. This is my 8th right here. And I have more, actually, that are just like in various stages of complete. I think 2 or 3 big ass novels that we still need to finish editing and put out there. And I've been writing very, very seriously for, I want to say, about the past 7 years. And I've been trying to write for about 20 years, but it just took a long time before I became really serious about it and like learned that I have to do this every single day. So that's what has to happen there. Let me see. What time is best for me? I always write in the morning better, because as the day goes on and my head gets like more full of bullshit, it's harder and harder for me to find the mental clarity to write. I need to get in there before I have time to go to work or anything like that. Everybody's got a time of day that's best for them to write. For me, it's early in the morning. I know a lot of people who do their best work like late at night when everybody else is gone. But the best time to write is like when you can do it. You know what I mean? Like everybody's got like an ideal body time or whatever where they'll be most productive. But any writing is better than no writing. Get in where you fit in. You know what I'm saying? Randall's gun. She tried to push the thought away, better to just disappear. But then she realized if they found her, everyone would think she'd killed herself over a stupid bicycle. Whoever had done this would think it was all them. They would think they'd won. She would have to weight herself down well so that didn't happen. Then she realized she had no way to get to the rapids tonight without the bicycle. She would have to walk the whole way. Cars would see her along the road. It was hard to just disappear. Cars would see her walking along the road. It was hard to just disappear. She found herself standing in front of her locker, number 1642. Another low and whispering feeling. If she was going to kill herself anyway, what the hell was she fighting against? If the Starball wanted to use her, so what? At least it wanted her. She'd wanted to die every single minute it had been sealed in the locker. She reached out to the dial and turned her combination, hesitating before she unlocked it. What if the Starball was angry? What if it drove her insane? What if she was already insane and there had never been a Starball? What if this was all one drawn-out delusion? Anywhere but here. Anyone but herself. She took off the lock, and the moment she opened the locker door, she could feel it, like she'd stepped like she'd stepped from darkness into the full light of the sun. How had she been oblivious to this? She reached into the locker, and the moment her fingertips touched the glossy shell. I agree. In the morning, you are full of energy. Yeah. Well, it depends, like on if you're a morning person or a night person. I didn't used to be a morning person. I worked the night shift overnight at a hotel for like 7 years, and like I was just up every night, and then I just slowly I began to feel like more and more like kind of bitter, and I just wasn't getting enough sun in my life. And then I swapped to the day shift, and I felt so much better. So yeah, I mean, that's that. Okay. Anywhere but herself. Freya took off the lock, and the moment she opened the locker door, she could feel it, like she'd stepped from darkness into the full light of the sun. How had she been oblivious to this for so long? The moment her fingertips touched the glossy shell of the Starball, she felt a warm tingling. She felt a tingling warmth radiating up her arm. The feeling intensified, and the padlock tumbled from her hand with a clack against the floor. She had to brace herself against the wall of lockers to keep from falling over. She shuddered with pleasure. Her breath came in short, rapid gasps through her nose. She'd nearly come, just from touching it. Whatever the Starball was, it no longer felt the need to be subtle. I don't care. Do whatever you want, she whispered, and the feeling fell equilibrium as it settled over her, like a kind of pleasant hum in her bones. The peace she'd wanted so badly came with it. The fog surrounding her pulled back. Everything was clear and distinct. Why had she fought against this? Maybe the Starball was only trying to help her all along. She ran through the things an alien intelligence might want. Building a Stargate, infiltrating the government, acquiring plutonium. There was no response, no sense it wanted any of these things, or that it could even understand her. Only calm. She tucked the Starball into her pocket where it belonged, and decided she could deal with the bike tomorrow. She took out her phone to call a cab, but before she did, she flipped to her text and replied to Dan. Freya, it was so stupid. I can't believe Radomir slapped her. They made up a little in the office. Sorry it took a while to get back to you. I was bummed about earlier, but I'm feeling better now. Thanks for asking. She thought about adding more, but stopped herself. She reached into her pocket and brushed her fingertips against the Starball, telling herself she would never let it go again. Damn. So that was, oh, did we renumber this chapter correctly? Let's take a look. So that was chapter 44, which means that the next chapter should be chapter number 45. Is this the type of book that you would read? I have read or heard that writers prefer reading similar books to what they write themselves. So I always tell people, um, if you're writing, the benefit of writing a book is that when you're done, you have exactly the type of book that you want to read. Like you're writing for an audience, right? But your first audience should always be yourself. You should I know a lot of people who write books that are not the type of books that they like to read. They just write for the money. You know, they're writing like nonfiction books. They're like, oh, well, like I'm kind of interested in whatever. And they're just using books as a way to monetize their interest in things. I know a lot of people who write like romance because it's commercially successful, and what they read themselves is like YA. And there are plenty of people who write like detective novels because it's what they're good at, but they would love to write like romance. You know, it's just there's a lot of people unable to do the thing that they really want to do going around. And, you know, this is something that you're going to work on for years, and it's not a good way to make money. Write a book that is the kind of book that you want to read, you know, because I'll tell you, you know, heartbreaking but true, you might be the only one that ever really reads it, right? You can put something out there and hopefully people will read it or whatever, but I've put out books that I think less than 100 people have read. But I like the books, right? I think they're fucking fantastic. You know, I've never written a book and published it where I didn't just think, this is amazing. Like, everybody should get a hold of this. I feel that way about this book right here. I think so far this is amazing. And in fact, amazing things are happening in this book right now. I can't believe that Freya just like, all right, fuck it. I'll be a slave to an alien mind control orb. It's better than everything else that's going on in my life. And she's right. She's absolutely right to from her perspective. And I really want to talk a little bit about this point with people who have been watching the stream for a little while there. Like, what do you think about her decision to, one, lock the Starball in her locker, which I think is reasonable. And two, what do you think about her just giving up and be like, you know what, fuck it. And then the Starball, like, oh, here's some candy, you know, like dopamine right in your brain, serotonin coming at you. Hell yeah. And also, like, who slashed up the tires of her bicycle? This is like a fucking getting crazy right there. You know, I think we all have some ideas about who might have done it, but things are heating up, right? And I will tell you that this is a very slow-paced book. Up the far. It's punctuated with like bits of action. Like we had like a few fights, and we had some trouble with the law and fights with her mother. But this is like a weird one. Okay, so if you want to check out what's happened thus far, you can go to zachzyz.com. And the nice thing about that is that we have every single chapter, one after the other. Each of them has like the video where I'm editing it. You can hear some of my thoughts and so forth there. I don't expect everybody to watch all these videos, but if there's a chapter you particularly are interested in, you can see some of the process there. The important thing there is, one, you can read the entire story and get an idea of what's happening. All my books are available for free on the site if you're interested. But the thing that I find is the coolest, and I hope people are taking advantage of this, is that I take a compare changes version of every chapter and I put it up there. And I think that's the most useful thing. It's something that you don't get to see from a lot of writers or editors and so forth. You just see the finished product of writing. And I think the process of changing things and the thought process behind it is so interesting. And so I put up that compare changes so you can see the initial rough draft chapter, and then you can see highlighted all the changes that we've made between the two. And as you're looking through it, you can see like why I've made those changes, what we're trying to improve right there. And to me, that's super interesting and valuable. But again, you know, like I think a lot of things are interesting that not everybody does. Well, anyhow, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Feel free to subscribe here or on YouTube or on my Twitter or whatever there. We do this every single morning. And if you ever need advice or tips on writing, advice is free. So yeah, great to meet you. Thanks for checking out the stream. We are going to end for the time being. I might try and do some editing later if I have more coffee. Let's take a look at how long this next chapter is going to be. Avert your eyes if you don't want spoilers. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it's just a 5-page chapter. Yeah, we can definitely try to get another chapter in. And we really are due to reread chapters number 43 and 44 because I think we breezed through them fairly quickly. And definitely what I'm finding is doing that second pass of editing where we reread, we get a lot of good changes. Like in chapter number 43, it's actually it's just 44 that we need to reread. So I think a little bit later today, I'm going to try and get in a second phase of editing. But Sunday, I can do whatever I want. Hell yeah. Follow right away. Like really. So I was just talking to another young person who is the other day about the Star Ball was a dream the whole time, according to Jira. Might be so. So I was talking with another young person about this the other day, and I've been at this for like a long time. I write every single day, and I will tell you a couple of things about the industry. One, writing novels is kind of going out of fashion for the most part, and I don't expect that to change. Fewer people are reading, and this is going to be the case. So your chances to like make $1 million at this will never be there. The thing is, this is a hobby that you don't have to make $1 million. Like you can put out books just for yourself. Every morning, I'm looking forward to coming here and doing, even this editing has been fun, especially since people are joining me with it. The process of writing is like the best part of my day every day. I've been at this for like 20 years and it is the joy of my life. Absolutely. Like when I was a very young person, I met a famous writer named Ray Bradbury, and he was the first adult I had ever met who liked their job and really just loved what they were doing. And I said right away, I want to do that. I don't want to work dig and ditch or work in a McDonald's or be like a teacher, because all those people were clearly miserable. This guy was having a good time, and I have to tell you, it really is a good time. It's something that you continually get better with. The more things that you do in your life, the more experiences you have, the more powerful you are as a writer. The older you get, the more you understand, the more polished you are, the more power that you have as a writer. Think about some other hobbies, like say that you love skiing. Well, that's great, right? As you get into your 30s and 40s, every time you get out there on the slopes, you're a little bit slower. It's a little bit harder to make it up. You can feel yourself diminishing over time. With writing, you just get stronger until your brain goes away. And that, to me, is an extremely valuable thing. I could have all my legs and arms broken, God forbid, and as long as I could talk or move my eyeballs, I would be able to continue doing this. So it's something that nobody can take away from you. It doesn't cost anything to write. You literally just need a pencil and some paper, which you can easily steal or just use like a library computer for free. Nobody can take this away from you. It's something that's always with you. So I think it's a great hobby to get into. Just don't get caught up in the idea that you'll have like a bestseller and like it'll change your life and so forth, because it's not the right approach and it's unrealistic for the vast majority of people. Not for me though, because I'm gonna be the one. I keep telling myself that shit, but it's fucking amazing. All right, so practice makes champion. I've seen it when I play or play an accordion, but it requires attitude and willingness. Yeah, if you put your time into this, I promise you, I can't promise you like any kind of success or money, but I can promise you a satisfaction that is just so profound. And really, to me, like I enjoy this more than almost anything else that I do on like a deep level. So good luck to everybody who's out there. Enjoyed chatting with you this morning. There may be another stream. And enjoy this wonderful outro that we got here. Hell yeah.